Okay, let's see if it killed it. I don't really know what's going on. The signal, with the ISP is constantly dropping, and the ISP said to me, "Well, we don't have any record of it dropping." And then I said it drops several times a day, especially right around this time. Okay, lost sucking tube. Suck. This is just sorry. I just hate starting a broadcast like this with with Spectrum telling me there's no problem. They don't see any problem, and yet this is I just changed my modem too, so I had to get a new modem, and it's still doing things without an explanation. No explanation to this. Okay, so it's just making me angry because I don't have an explanation, and they said signal strength is very high, and yet it keeps dropping week after week after week, and I'm just so tired of it. So anyway, they're saying they don't even have a record of it dropping. They said there's no record of, oh, we saw it drop 15 minutes the night before. That's about it. I said it drops multiple times a day. So today it dropped, I don't know, that I saw, meaning while I was using it, at least 5 times. And, and who knows how many times it drops when I'm not watching it. And I already changed the modem. It's a new modem. So, anyway, if I'm being hacked, it's going to be happening at the Spectrum side because you can actually see the modem disconnect. The modem is disconnecting. I can tell you that. I mean, you can see it disconnect. So that's what's happening here. And then it takes a couple of minutes to get it restored. So anyway, they say the line is okay, as far as the cable, because they can check a signal strength, and the signal strength is very high. So in theory, then it's okay. So I said, okay, I buy that, but then there's something wrong in the network. So I don't know. This is just it just gets me off the program here. Okay, back to what we're talking about. So the main topic is the options to using your iOS phone, your Android phone, and for privacy reasons, we do not want to use those phones. So the question is, what options do we have? If you're not here asking about privacy options on phones, you're in the wrong Zucking channel. I'm telling you right now. If you're going to tell me how you love iOS and Android, wrong channel. Okay? So I understand your love for iOS and Android, but that's not what this is about. This is about trying to keep these devices from spying on you. YouTube is on a different broadcast now. So find the new broadcast on YouTube. The old broadcast died. So there's a new broadcast there. And YouTube is not able to recover. Periscope doesn't shut down. It will hang forever long you want it to hang. And it doesn't get rid of the broadcast, so you can always start it. Okay, so given this, the question is, what is the advantage or disadvantage of loading a Android custom ROM like one of the popular ones? The most popular one is called Lineage OS. Okay, the most popular one is Lineage OS. So why would that be bad? In actuality, it's not that bad. It's certainly an improvement from Android, but it still has some flaws in it. And we're going to talk about some of the issues. One of the things you have to realize is what actually is dangerous on these devices. And if you understand the dangers in each device, then you can kind of make a decision on what concerns you and what doesn't. So let me just, that's not true, anonymous one. It's better than having no VPN. It's better than having no VPN. So your choice is, the VPN will not save you, so let's use no VPN. Sucked up. There's almost no situation where you don't need a VPN. You have to. It's kind of a number one thing. You can't function with it. It may not be perfect, but there's no choice. The alternative is worse. Anyway, let's stick to topic here. The topic is what is exactly on this device that you need to worry about. So let's start with the hardware problems with this. You can be spied on this device in multiple ways. Number one is the cell modem portion. It's called the cell baseband. You can be spied on with the cell baseband. Now, if you don't know how exactly you can be spied on with a cell baseband, it's in the Zucking News. There are at least 4 attacks I know of that can backdoor any Zucking phone, every single one, 100%. So if you can backdoor 100% of the phones, then obviously that's an attack that you need to worry about when using a cell phone. If you're not using a cell phone, you're actually not subject to these 4 backdoors. They just have to, manually listen to you with wiretapping. But as far as being able to spy on you remotely, the only way to do that is if you have a cell phone. And there are 4 of these that are listed in a video that I have. If you ever want to know, what the 4 backdoors are to the phone, then you should go watch my video on the backdoors to your phone and learn about those 4. Now, let me just tell you about those 4, because this is very essential to understand. The 4 backdoors in the phone are almost all attacks that are made by state players. So I am not really expecting a backdoor attack on the cell baseband from a normal hacker. A normal hacker isn't going to be a concern on the baseband. So some of you are saying you need a hardware switch on a phone in order to stop the baseband from being spied on. The baseband modem. Otherwise, I'll just refer to it as the baseband. So you need a what do you call this? A hardware switch to kill the signal to the baseband. And only one device is built with a hardware switch, and we can't get it, and that is the Librem 5, which is not available to those who bought it. So we're still waiting for that, and I'm thinking I'm not going to get it before 2020 sometime, probably closer to spring 2020 before I even see it. And I bought it, in the summer. So that's going to be a year before I even see that, and I spent $720 on it. So I'm not going to see the Librem 5. So the Librem 5 is a hardware switch. And yes, I'll tell you here right now, if you have a Librem 5, in theory, and you turn off the switch to the baseband, then all of the 4 backdoors will be gone. You cannot backdoor a phone with a switch off. Understandably, there's no mystery there. 4 backdoors will disappear. There will not be any issue when you turn off the switch. The problem is, why would you turn off the switch if you want to use the phone? So there we are with a Librem 5 in your hand, and are you going to turn off the baseband? If you expect a phone call to come in where you have the baseband off. If you have the baseband off, then you can't make a phone call. Okay, and I'm going to tell you a little secret that is actually kind of similar, and you do not need to buy a Librem 5 to accomplish this. There is an alternate way to shut down any kind of tracking on the baseband that I know of in these 4 backdoors I just mentioned. And it's actually quite simple. Very simple. Did you know that if you took out the SIM card, all of the backdoors will fail? So I don't need a hardware switch necessarily. Just pull out the SIM card. Now, will you do it? Probably not. And will you turn off the switch on your Librem 5 if you had one? Probably not. If you had a Pine phone, which has the switches in the back, when you get that, and it's a dip switch, are you actually going to pull up the back open and do this dip switch, or are you going to instead remove the SIM card? They're kind of equal steps to me, except that the SIM card requires a tool, like a paper clip. So given the situation, I'm telling you that at least as far as the 4 specific attacks that I know of, on the baseband, all will fail with the SIM card taken out. Now, Elias is going to say, well, that's not necessarily safe because the baseband shares the same memory space as the Librem, the OS. They share the same memory bus. So if somebody could talk to the baseband, and the baseband can in theory read the contents of your memory on the device. Yes, there may be other attacks that I do not know about. The 4 attacks that I'm talking about are known to somebody, and so the 4 attacks all require a SIM card. So those are the only attacks that I'm aware of, and since taking off the SIM cards will take that out, you will at least eliminate all 4 of the attacks. Simple enough. You don't even have to buy a new phone. You can even stick to your sucking Android or iOS phone and just take a little pin in there, remove the SIM card when you're not using your phone, and voila! You no longer are subject to the 4 backdoors. So, kind of a cheap workaround here. So, do you really need to get a new phone to do that? Well, yeah, convenience-wise, it's really inconvenient to take off the SIM card. And some of these devices, it's very hard to take it out. It depends on the device. It was very easy to take it off the Nexus 5, I'm going to tell you. On this device, it's really easy to take off the SIM card. I don't think it's easy to take off the SIM card on an iPhone. Personally, I've never found it easy to take off the SIM card on an iPhone. So given those, again, the threats that I am aware of, and sure, there may be other threats, but at least the main threat here, are with the 4 backdoors that I mentioned in my video. And all of those backdoors can be thwarted by removing the SIM card. Okay? So if you ever fear, let's say you're going to, I'll give you an example here. You want to use your phone to play games, but you do not want to get tracked. So you said, okay, I'm going to a protest. It's an anonymous protest. What do I do? Well, at least one thing you can do is before you go to the protest, take off the zucking SIM card, put it in your pocket, and then when the time comes, put it back in when you need to make a call. So that will cover the baseband problem. So any questions on the baseband? Do any of you think that you can be hacked on the baseband even if you remove the SIM card? So one of you raised the point, which is valid, that even without a SIM card, you're able to do emergency calling 911. So therefore, there has to be some sort of connection between the baseband. Between the phone and the cell tower, even without a SIM card. That is correct. But the identifier for the phone is based on the SIM card, and the SIM card will identify the phone by IMSI number. The IMSI which is the identifier for cell phones, exists even on a Librem 5. So it doesn't matter you have a Librem 5, you have an MZ, it can track it. You have to turn off the switch or remove the SIM card, in which case then it loses identification. Can your phone still be identified? Yes, it can be identified with something called the IMEI. Now, here's where the hardware switch works, because when you turn off the hardware switch, then of course the IMEI, which is the hardware identifier, is cut off. There's no way for it to emit the IMEI. However, knowing all the hacks that I know of, it looks like a lot of the code is also in the SIM card. And because there's no carrier that will allow you to connect to their network, unless 911 will not allow you to connect to their network without a SIM card, then pretty much it's very hard to identify your device if somebody's just trying to search for it and saying, let's attack Rob Braxman's phone that does not have a SIM card. That is not so simple to do. Okay? That's not simple to do because the phone is not going to react. You can't send the phone commands if it's not listening to the commands. Okay? So it's kind of one way. This phone has to reach out for 911. This phone is not going to listen in the background for commands because there's no SIM card. It's not listening to the network. Okay? Does that make any sense what I'm saying here? Is it possible to make fit Linux to the iPhone? No. No, that is not possible. Do not zuck with your IMEI number because you will go to jail. Yes. Using a mobile hotspot significantly decreases privacy. Yes. The information is talking about is correct. Okay. So anyway, given this, it is my conclusion that we really need to remove the baseband from the equation, since no device is immune to the baseband problem, even a Librem 5, as long as you have a SIM card in there. So, and the power's on. And many of you will not turn off the power to a Librem 5, even if you had one or a Pine phone, because you need to use the phone. So, and if you want to use an equivalent on this, just take off the SIM card and you've just made a cheap version of the Librem 5 with a kill switch, because taking off the SIM card, for all practical purposes, for all the current hacks that I am aware of, that is not 0-day, that will work. Okay, now, can you hack a BlackBerry Bold 9900, which is one of the ones I recommend in the flip phone video? Can you use a BlackBerry Bold 9900? Yes, a BlackBerry Bold 9900 is subject to the same backdoors as all the phones. In fact, any phone, 100% of the phones are subject to the backdoor attacks. So the only protection of a BlackBerry Bold is to remove the SIM card, just like all these phones. Therefore, conclusion, since all phones are equal, since all phones are equally bad, then there is no point to comparing phones and saying this phone is better when it comes to the baseband and this phone is not. This has a hardware switch and this one does not. I would say all phones are equally suspect on the baseband. All. Android, iOS, Lineage OS, Graphene OS, Ubuntu Touch, Librem 5, Pure OS, whatever OS you want to put on there, I don't really care. They're all subject to the same problem because it's actually hardware. The problem on the phone side, the baseband, is a hardware problem. It is not software. So you can load all the versions of OSs that you want to put on there. It's independent of the OS. The OS has nothing to do with it. That's why they're all equal. That's why we need to take it off the equation, because it doesn't matter. All phones can be attacked at the baseband. Accept that, deal with it, take off the SIM card if you do not have a kill switch, or use the kill switch. Okay, so that's what I recommend. Now, knowing this, we can now, hopefully, where's Elias? Is Elias still here? I want to take off the baseband from the equation of phone comparisons. Does anyone have an argument with that? Let's take the baseband off the comparison. Take the baseband off, because if you're all at the same level of vulnerability, then what's the point? Let us not talk anymore about the baseband since you're all vulnerable. Okay. Okay, now let's talk about the next serious level of attack on a phone, and it has to do with the Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi on any modern phone is a pretty sophisticated spying device, and the spying device is actually accessed at multiple levels. And some of you don't know this, so I'm going to have to explain the multiple levels here. So a spy device, I would say that in my immediate knowledge here, that there are three avenues of privacy loss on a phone using the Wi-Fi, and that doesn't include the IP address. So the IP address is a given. That would be the fourth one if you were counting that. So if you want to count that, you need a VPN, obviously, to handle that. So we're going to set the IP address aside for the moment because that's true of any device. Again, that is a common thing. It's not going to change no matter what device you use. If your device has Wi-Fi, it has an IP address. All devices then will be suspect. Thus, all devices are equally vulnerable with the Wi-Fi IP address problem, in which case you need a Wi-Fi router, Wi-Fi VPN router. Okay, so these are on my products here at rob.brax.me, and you can have this with an extended antenna. That one does not have the antenna. I'm using the antenna, so I can't show it to you, but it has an extended antenna. Okay, so the IP address we're going to set the IP address aside as a threat since it's not going to be different from phone to phone. Every phone will have the same problem there. Okay, so nothing special with an iOS phone, a BlackBerry Bold 9900, a Android Lineage OS, Ubuntu Touch. All of you have the same problem with IP address. So the question now is, what is the attack that you worry about on the Wi-Fi adapter? There are three that I know of, and one attack can only exist on Android and iOS. Okay, so if you have an Android, anyone with an Android here, your phone scans the networks around you and reports all the Wi-Fi routers around you and reports it to Google. It's happening on the side channel. It's one of these signals that go on the side channel. You do not participate in this. This is not something you get input on. You do not get to agree or not agree. Well, on later versions of Android, they actually have a methodology to ignore that, to not do that, but that doesn't matter because your neighbors are doing it. So anyone with an Android is spotting all the MAC addresses of the routers near you. Okay? And Great Gold is right. That is what hackers are familiar with as promiscuous mode. So all Wi-Fi, all Androids use promiscuous mode. All iOS devices use promiscuous mode to say what are the routers in the area, find their MAC addresses, and send them over to Apple and Google together with their signal strength. So signal strength and the MAC addresses of the routers. This is a continuous process that's happening multiple times, probably every second, multiple times a minute for sure. More so on Android than on Apple. And it's sending this on the side channel. And this is the promiscuous mode spotting and looking for Wi-Fi's around you. That is a very revealing little tool there that I'm talking about, this little scanning program that happens, because this scanning program actually can basically identify your location just by you sending the location of other routers. Because if you are sending the location of the routers, in essence, they're triangulating you as well, without stating that they're triangulating you. So Apple and Google knows where your phone is at all times. You cannot turn it off because the scanning happens in the background. Okay? And this has to do with them building the database. This is how they build a database of routers that contribute to Wi-Fi triangulation. This is the building block of Wi-Fi triangulation. It's built into Android and iOS. Okay? This is a very dangerous piece because you cannot turn it off. Now, having said that, does that exist on Lineage OS? So let's say you root your Android and put something else on there. Does that exist on Lineage OS? Does not exist on Ubuntu Touch? I can guarantee you that does not exist on Ubuntu Touch. I don't know if that exists in Lineage OS because I don't know for sure if it's in Lineage OS, but that has to be sent to Google. So if there's no methodology to send it to Google, then Google's not going to get it. Okay, so is Lineage OS sending that data because they are using standard Android code in that? Is that part of the Android open source? I don't know for sure. So we're going to make an assumption today. We're going to say that it does not send it to Google. Okay, we're going to assume that this piece of telemetry that's sending the scanning of Wi-Fi routers. You see, I'm getting to detail here. Since I know what the devices are doing, I'm a little different than people who speculate on this. I actually know what these things do. So when you're listening to me, I'm not telling you, something that I don't understand. I actually understand exactly what it does. Okay, so the technique of spotting the MAC addresses is part of the Google API. In the geolocation API, it actually has that where you send the MAC addresses to Google. So I'm going to guess that is only done on the Google portion of the Android, not the main section of Android that's open source. So if so, then would that make Lineage OS or any other custom ROM safer than the standard stock Android or standard stock Apple? Not knowing any better, we will assume that is the case. I will then assume that if you load a custom ROM, Lineage OS, Graphene OS, whatever you put on your phone, will be a tad better than Android because you are not going to get that step that I'm talking about. Now, on newer Androids, you can actually turn that off. It's in the advanced settings. You can actually turn off this little spy thing, but you can never know when you turn something off if it really is turned off because they still get signals on the side. So I am not certain about that. So I'm gonna assume that turning it off doesn't really give us any security. So will Android be less safe than a Lineage OS or Android custom ROM? I'm going to say that's true. So we're going to say thank you, Twitty. Okay, so we're going to say that it is a better choice to go with a custom ROM than an Android. So any Android that you switch the ROM to something else is going to be a tad better. Now, completely better or not, that's something we're going to work on. Next question. So you have you've done the custom ROM. Now, what else is Google digging up from the phone? Well, the one thing it's going to dig from you is your Google login ID. So one of the first leaks of information on your phone is when you log into Google. Any Google service requires that you log into Google. And you can't hardly use an Android phone without logging into Google. You can't hardly do anything. Okay, so there's no way to load apps on anything unless you log into Google. So when it comes to like Lineage OS and all that, you can sideload the apps and load it without going to the store. So simply by turning on the phone and logging into Google, and you have no alternative but to do that, is revealing you because you put in your. Let me tell you what Google has about you, and same with Apple. When you log into the phone, they have your user ID, your Gmail that you use for your Google accounts, and your iOS email address, which is tied to your ducking credit card. Tied to your credit card. And if you're a developer, it's tied to your developer account, your company account, phone numbers, addresses, what your bank account is, and all that. It's tied to everything with Google. Same with Apple. It's tied to your developer accounts, tied to whatever you purchase, and tied to whatever money you receive from Apple. All of that is tied into one account. So you are zucked just by using Android and iOS. There's no way around it. You are zucked. Okay? They know so much about you. I told you they know your location. I told you that you cannot hide your location from Android and iOS because of this scanning feature I was talking about earlier. Okay? You cannot hide from Apple and Google. And now when you log in, not only are you not hiding every location you've been in all day, they now are tracking you by your email address, which is tied to your Google account, and they know all the apps you have and all the bank accounts, your actual address from the bank, and on and on and on. So all of that is now part of their information database. So now they know exactly that Wei Fu Can's full name is X, and knows everything he's been doing, zucking all day, and what he's spending his money on, and all the seeds he's been buying, and all that. So they know all of that. They know all the heat lamps and all the special equipment that Wei Fu Can would be buying. So they have that information. And we're not even counting about the fact that since it's a credit card, in theory, then they can see all of the other transactions that occur when you buy something from Amazon or whatever else, because the credit card has all that information. So Apple is using the credit card, and they can go check your credit rating and all that. Okay? Good. GNHTX, answer for me. Don't put any money on that. I'll put money on that, Wei Fu Can. Okay, unless you're telling me, oh, I pay cash. Oh, yeah, you'll be tracked anyway. Okay, so given this, I'm going to say that using a Lineage OS or Ubuntu Touch would be better than Android iOS when it comes to the login ID. So now we've wiped that out. It's another one of these attacks that we need to be concerned about. Okay, so now we're getting happier here. We have two choices now. We have Lineage OS and some sort of Linux on a phone, like Ubuntu Touch right now, and Pure OS on the Librem 5 when we get it, and whatever is used on a Pine phone. So when we get all those, now we have other options. Now we're going to examine this. Does the Oculus Quest hack you? I'm asking because I wanted, but Facebook. Zuck! Don't get that, Elias. Zuck that. Oculus Rift. Zuck! Not gonna use anything from zucking Zuck. Crazy? Windows Phone OS and an option. I just need my computer. I don't need a phone. Can I just have a small computer, and then can I just put a cell thing on it so I can receive calls? Can I just have a computer as a phone? Do I really need all this? Only 400. Yeah, what? They can't sell anymore? It's wireless? Who cares if it's wireless? Guess what it's from? From Zuck. Was BlackBerry OS safe? On the levels that I've just talked about, with the baseband. All are not immune with the Wi-Fi scanning. Yes, immune from that. Okay, back to I missed before I switch on to topic here. I'm not done with the Wi-Fi portion. Why did I forget that? Okay, so not because I'm reading comments and I forget where I am. Okay, back to the Wi-Fi. Back to the Wi-Fi issue. Hello, Matthew. Back to the Wi-Fi issue. So one attack I told you only exists on Android and iOS. Now there's another attack here, and it's called Wi-Fi triangulation. As I've explained to you many times, that Wi-Fi triangulation is on iOS. It's actually a firmware. I told you that the Wi-Fi triangulation is code developed by Skyhook Wireless, and they put it inside the Broadcom chip that is on every sucking iPhone. So all iPhones have the Broadcom chip, and they have the Wi-Fi triangulation in there. So when I loaded Ubuntu Touch on these phones, the question was, do these phones get Wi-Fi? So this is Ubuntu Touch. Do these phones get Wi-Fi triangulation exactly just like iOS and Android? What I was trying to prove is that if Wi-Fi triangulation is actually on the chip firmware. Confirmed. On any Android device. The Wi-Fi triangulation is actually on the Android hardware. So if you run Ubuntu Touch, I am unhappy to tell you that it triangulates me just as well on Ubuntu Touch. There is absolutely nothing safe about the location tracking on Ubuntu Touch. It's exactly the same as with iOS, Android, Lineage OS. They're all the same. It is a threat to all. This is why the hardware switch is the only way to ensure, because you can and you would turn off the hardware switch on Wi-Fi when you're not using it, because you know you're not using it. And when you turn off the hardware switch on the Wi-Fi, your device should switch to GPS. Should switch to GPS. GPS does not work indoors. So if it can't find you by GPS, it should find you by IP address. Okay, so that's the I want you to do a music scope. Matthew Vick, I just did a music scope and nobody watches. What the fuck are you talking about? I did a music scope on Monday. I was playing a concert yesterday, and I did not. I recorded, but I didn't make a video because I said, "Who's going to watch this? No one's going to watch it." Anyway, so I'm unhappy to tell you that this is just as vulnerable to Wi-Fi triangulation as anything else. So if you're thinking that somehow this is safer for Wi-Fi triangulation, in that sense, it's not. The sense that it's not sending anything to Apple and Google without your knowledge, that is correct. It does not send anything to Apple and Google without your knowledge, unlike Android and iOS. So let me just make that clear. So I've talked about two threats on Wi-Fi so far. Threat number one is the background sensing of MAC addresses of routers near you. And that goes on without any kind of switch, and you cannot turn it off. And so it's constantly sending data to Apple and Google, identifying Wi-Fi is nearby. And that goes in a side channel, and you cannot turn that off. Hello, John Leger. How are you doing? How are you doing? I switched to T-Mobile. John Leger is here from T-Mobile. Switch to T-Mobile here, John. T-Mobile. For those of you on YouTube, you don't see, but John Leger is on Periscope. How are you doing, John? Good to see you. Good to see you back. Good to see you back. One time, John came to my program and gave a Galaxy S9 away. So somebody won a Galaxy S9. That was that was awesome. So, anyway, we're talking about phone safety, John, and you know, all these unsafe phones that are being given to us. So I don't know. I know T-Mobile doesn't make the phone, so this is running. So John, this is running Ubuntu Touch, which is currently on T-Mobile. I'm running Ubuntu Touch, so which is a Linux phone, a GNU Linux phone. So this is running GNU Linux, not running Android, not running iOS. I have another BlackBerry Bold also using T-Mobile. So so T-Mobile is my go-to right now. Should we give away one of your idea of safe? Should we give away one of your idea of safest phone? I don't know what I would give away because these are all used phones. These are all used phones, John. But if you want to give away a brand new Samsung, I'm sure they'll all be happy to get it. They can always load Lineage OS on it and sign it up with T-Mobile. So yes. So uh, uh, okay, John. This is from YouTube. John needs better coverage in rural Middle Tennessee. So some of these people are complaining about your coverage in the rural areas. Is there a way to circumvent a modem's car's infotainment system? Okay, see you later, John. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in. So anyway, back to what we're talking about, and that was kind of nice to see John Leger here from T-Mobile comes by regularly on our broadcast. Thank you very much, John. So back to what we're talking about on these phones, the Wi-Fi part of the phone, the triangulation is in the hardware, which is why it doesn't really matter what device you have. Now, let me just tell you this: the device used on a Librem 5 is a separate chip, so I don't know if that specific model has Wi-Fi triangulation on the chip as it is with all the other ones. We have to assume so, because I can't imagine somebody making something different. So if the chip for the triangulation is built into the Librem 5 Wi-Fi and there's an off switch, then at least you can turn that off. And there's no off switch otherwise. You cannot turn off the Wi-Fi spying with airplane mode. None of that will work. I'm telling you right now, none of that will work. None of that will work. However, I'm going to tell you this, and this is kind of neat. Okay, the second attack on the Wi-Fi, which is the location Wi-Fi triangulation portion, can be turned off on the OS. So the OS can make it unavailable to all the apps, and I found that to be true on the Ubuntu Touch. So the Ubuntu Touch, it did, when I turned it off, it really the apps were unaware of why it was turned off, and looks like they've isolated it. So when you have location off on this phone, that is not an attack. This is on an Ubuntu Touch. That is not an attack you're going to have to worry about. I'm going to assume the same on a custom ROM. Eagle Source, my other yes, this is running T-Mobile here. Yeah, this works, but the problem is my other one, the one that was working, this is Android here. This is not yet flashed. The one that I had Android, the SIM card tray was busted, so I couldn't test that. So anyway, this one Plus here, which is running Android for the moment, I haven't converted it yet successfully. That one is running T-Mobile on a SIM card. This one is a Nexus 5, and it's an international phone. So I can't really use this. So unless you're from a country that takes an international phone, anyone can use that? You can use this in Mexico? Maybe I can sell to somebody in Mexico. If anybody wants to buy this and you're from nearby, this is an Nexus 5. I'll give you a good deal on it, and then I'll buy a US one. So this one is not a US phone. So I'm using it only for development. It's not a US phone. How many fingers am I holding up? Thank you, Twitty. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate so much. Supporting the program. Many of you don't realize, but we it's very hard to make a living doing this videos and all this, and I'm doing this full time. I'm not, I'm only making a living from selling whatever products I sell when I do these broadcasts, and selling my my Brax Wi-Fi modem, my VPN, my alarm systems. This is a radar alarm. These are, which is available now. You can buy it now. These are only the only things that sustain us. And then if you give on Patreon, and Twitty is also a Patreon supporter. Thank you very much, Twitty. Thank you so much. And then you have these. This is the security camera. So all of these devices are made with cybersecurity in mind, because it's made by me, who knows about cybersecurity. So they're made to not be hackable or controllable on the internet, and that's what supports the program. So check out these products. They're very, very interesting products, and I'll make videos about them soon. I just haven't had the time. So you're in Vegas, okay? So thank you, Entire Meyer. Thank you for helping as well, because Entire Meyer is very quick to buy my products, and every time I have a new product, Entire Meyer is out there saying, me first. I appreciate it. And some other ones, unless they identify themselves, I will not identify you, but thank you for supporting the products that I have. So anyway, back to what I'm saying about the Wi-Fi. So is the Wi-Fi location Wi-Fi a threat? Yes, it is. I would rather that these phones not have Wi-Fi triangulation. The reason I'm worried about Wi-Fi triangulation is it's very precise. If you understand how it works, it can find you within 6 feet. Okay? 6 feet. Do I really need something to identify my position within 6 feet? Can I give you like a quarter-mile radius? 6 feet? I mean, that's just a little bit too much. Whatever I do is known within 6 zucking feet. So if I go into a building, it's obvious I went to the building because it's within 6 zucking feet of Wi-Fi triangulation. And it works even on an Ubuntu Touch because it's Android. These are Android hardware devices. This is a Nexus 5 Android hardware. This is a 1+1 Android hardware. Okay? So for that reason, I worry about Wi-Fi triangulation. So I'd rather not have it. But fortunately, I don't really find too much of a problem with just turning it off on this. And I don't have the spyware that's on Android and iOS is constantly tracking my location without getting a choice. So here, you have a true choice. If you go to your Lineage OS or your Ubuntu Touch or your Linux phone and you turn off location, it will in fact get turned off. I would rather have a hardware switch so I know it's really off, but at least it gets turned off. Because the third risk with the Wi-Fi has to do with the MAC address probes. So this is the third problem with the Wi-Fi. Let me repeat the Wi-Fi issues again. One is the promiscuous mode scanning of networks, which you cannot stop, not with airplane mode, not with anything. You can't stop it. It goes on all day. And it tracks every Wi-Fi around you and then reports it to Apple and Google. And it's built into every Apple and Google phone. It is definitely not on Ubuntu Touch. Okay? That is not... Ubuntu Touch doesn't have the API for doing that because it's Google specifically. So if there's no Google API for it, it's not going to go to Google. I don't know about a custom Android ROM but we're going to assume that maybe they know not to use that code. I don't know, but I have more confidence that the Linux phone doesn't have it. Okay, so I'm confident the Linux phone doesn't have it. So now back to these devices. What is the third risk on the device when it comes to our privacy? And that has to do with Wi-Fi probes. So all of these devices, they're radios. So these are all radios, and every device that you have that's wireless is emitting a radio signal announcing your MAC address anywhere you go. So anywhere you walk around, it's announcing your MAC address. So any hacker can go listen in and listen to the MAC address of these. And I know many, many ways of how to manipulate you just by listening to the MAC address. Okay, I've made several broadcasts telling you what kind of hacks I can think of. And the one guy that found out what the hack should be that he can use against you with your MAC address is Zuck. So Zuck found a way to use MAC addresses to attack you on your phone. Okay, so if you're running an Android, I just played the anonymous song, Michelle. I did play that at the beginning. It's on the terminated broadcast. It's already in replay on YouTube, but not on Periscope. So anyway, the question is, how do we fight this MAC address tracking? Obviously, turning off the switch. That's why the Librem 5 is very, very convenient, because you turn off the switch and all of these attacks will stop without even having to do anything. But you can thwart an attack by Facebook on the MAC address, and the easiest way to track that is by something called MAC address spoofing. Well, fortunately, you can do MAC address spoofing on an Android device as well as a Linux device. In fact, it's very easy to do on Linux. Very easy to do on Linux. On Linux, just install something called Mac Changer, and you can do it. So nothing much to do. You can put your MAC address in there and change it. Now, there are some effects to changing MAC addresses. This is not an automatic security thing, because it will screw up your IP addresses. So your IP address will be very unstable. Will keep changing in your local area network. So if you want to be more secure on a non-Librem 5 phone, all you have to do is put a MAC address changer software on your phone. There's some apps I think on Android can do it, and on Linux you just run Mac Changer. Okay, so then it'll do it on Linux. It's very hard to install regular programs though on Ubuntu Touch, I'm going to tell you. So this is locked down. So this is Ubuntu Touch. So this is a Linux phone, and it's actually it's nice. I mean, the interface is predictable. It runs like what you expect a mobile OS to do, and like you can do that and close an app, as you expect, dragging it up, kind of consistent now with iOS and Android. Originally started with iOS. I guess I can't. I was trying to close a window and I'm not allowed to. So given this, I'm saying there's a workaround to the problem. It doesn't stop the Wi-Fi from causing an issue, but at least whoever's getting the data is not going to get any substantial or important data when you spoof the MAC address, because there's only so many attacks that they can do, and if you know what it is, I don't need to buy Librem 5 to stop that particular attack. Now I'm going to tell you, so in conclusion here, let's kind of draw a conclusion to all this, and I know I spent an hour talking about these options here. In conclusion here, this is what I'm going to tell you. If I know what the attacks are, do I need to buy and I did buy a Librem 5, but do you need to buy Librem 5 to achieve these kinds of security uh, successes. Do you need to buy a new Librem 5? And the answer is no. There's a poor man's method. Take off the SIM card, turn off the location switch, get off Android. There's nothing you can do on iOS. So dump iOS, definitely. You can't really be on iOS and have any privacy. So dump iOS and Android. Okay? Clearly, you don't. Whatever the solutions are, it's not going to be iOS and Android. None of those. Now, do I have any specific issue with using Lineage OS, a Ubuntu, or a Linux, a GNU Linux phone, or Pure OS, whatever variation of Linux phone there is that's going to come out? Is that necessary? I'm going to say for now, if I prefer the hardware switch, but if you want a poor man's solution, I'm okay with a poor man's solution. I'm okay with a poor man's solution. Now, let me tell you the one reason I would not want to use a custom ROM of Android. This is the only reason that's kind of making it unequal at the moment. So, this is a very important statement because so far I've equalized Lineage OS and other custom ROMs together with Ubuntu Touch, UB ports, and equalized it with Pure OS and any other Linux variety that's going to be on the Pine phone. So at the moment they seem equal, but they're not. And the reason is this: if you're running Lineage OS makes no presumptions about security. They don't really say that they make your phone more secure, or neither do they say privacy is our goal. That's not a stated thing in their advertising. So I'm not going to say that that they're doing anything specific related to that. But I'm going to tell you this: if you're going to use a Android version as a solution, the reason you're choosing Android is because you want to use Android apps. So I know some of you will say, well, yeah, I got to have my Waze. So if I'm going to have Waze, I'm going to have Google. So you're going to load, even on Lineage OS, you're going to load a Waze app, which will track you to death. And whatever apps, Google Maps and whatever else you have in there. So the problem is this. Standard apps on Android are packaged as APK files, and you can load them into your Lineage OS and other things that you can use. And the problem with these is that every app that's made using the standard code that comes from Google has all the tracking built in to the Google API, and everything to do with Google is built into the program. So all the trackers are built inside the program of every app that's running as an APK, a Google app, an Android app. Basically, all Android apps have built-in trackers. I know this. I build Android apps. There are many things in there that could be sending a signal to Apple. One of them, as an example, and there are many obvious ones that I know and many obvious ones that I do not know. I'll tell you one that's pretty obvious that you should all know. And one of them is notifications. In order for notifications to be sent, Google has to track your phone. Google has to track your phone. So if you have notifications, Google is tracking your phone. This is the advantage of Linux. Since Linux is not connected to Google notifications, there is no Google notification tracking your phone necessarily, although you can still run web apps that can track some things about you, although more limited. For example, you can run Google Maps on this Ubuntu Touch. So on this Ubuntu Touch phone, I have Google Maps on here. When I hello creative So when I ran Ubuntu Touch on this phone, when I ran Google Maps on this, yeah, I was tracked. So I turned off location and then it stopped. At least that's part of the tracking. So, because of that, I'm going to tell you that you are not really secure at all if you're using any kind of Android alternative, because you're using Android apps. And all the Android apps, by the mere nature of how they're made, they're forced to use the Google APIs, they're forced to use Java, and they all have these internal trackers in there that track usage of the app, how many times the app was installed, uninstalled, and which device it's on, how many times it's been turned on. All of those trackers are in the app and they're sent to Google. So if you're loading a standard app that is from the Google Store, then what's the point? You have lost your privacy. I don't really care what you've loaded on there. You've already lost your privacy because they're already tracking all those things. Okay, in case you didn't guess what I understand what I just said, if you have a Google app, an Android app, I'm a developer, I make Android apps. If I make an Android app, I'm going to select some of these trackers that I'm going to put on there. And those trackers are important for Google to find out if you're going to buy something, if you're going to use the notifications, if you're going to use some of the other services and ad services. And then they also have reporting for tracking for crashes and how many times you've used it, if you've used it recently, and those statistics go to the developers. So even if you take any Android app and load it to Lineage OS, there's nothing that's going to stop those apps from reporting to Google. Because that's what they do. They report to Google from Android. So I don't know what the fuck you're doing with a Lineage OS app unless you're going to load some other kinds of apps in there and not have a single app from the App Store. That does not make any sense. I don't believe you're going to do that. I don't believe you're going to run Lineage OS and install apps that are not from the App Store. I do not believe that at all. In contrast, when you have a Linux phone, you're putting in Linux apps in here or web apps, which are more restricted and they do not send anywhere near the kind of telemetry that will be sent by standard Android app. Nowhere near, not even notifications. So in fact, the notifications, you have to design notifications for Linux, and I don't even have it designed to do that. So I can't send notifications on Linux right now. I have to find out what their methodology is. So do you understand what I'm saying here? That I'm going to make a conclusion here. That the conclusion is, are these phones, Ubuntu Touch phones, are these safe enough? Given the workarounds I just told you, I'm going to say, yes, they're safe enough. If somebody asks me, what are you going to do use as a phone? Do you buy a flip phone? Like, who's asking the flip phones? Donna? So Donna's asking, are flip phones secure? No, they're not any less secure than this. If you're talking about an Ubuntu Touch phone. Okay? So there are no Google apps in here, no Android apps in here. Okay, the Android apps are as much to fear as Google apps, meaning made by third parties. Third-party Android apps are just as much to fear as Google apps because they send the telemetry to Google because they were programmed using the Google API for Android. You're using Eclipse and Java and all the stuff that use with. I mean, this is stuff that, if you understand how you program on Android, you're going to know what I'm talking about. So if you're a programmer and you've done an Android app, go look in all the APIs and all the other choices in there. Go look at the API choices, and they even track how many times you use an API. Apple notifications attach you to Apple, obviously. So if I'm going to make a suggestion, I'm going to suggest to you, why not leave your iOS and Android phone at home? Have it as I don't care if you have an Android and iOS phone at home because they already know you're home. You know, what happened to the stock, Jay? Okay, so leave your. Wouldn't it be nice if you can leave your iOS and Android phone at home and carry an Ubuntu phone or a Linux phone when you're not at home? Just imagine the kind of limiting information and do the things that you can do. In fact, I would take off the SIM card off your iOS and take off the SIM card from your iOS and Android phone and use it just a phone for fun and apps, and use a different phone for actual use. Most free Android apps are just ad. Is that blobs? Am I reading that right? Yes, that's correct. But can I read that properly here? Most free Android apps. Yeah, so that's, and I didn't even talk about the ads. You know, the fingerprinting. When you have a free Android app and it has the ads, when you have a free iOS app and it has the ads, the tracking is being done by those sucking ads. Suck. Amazon is not running right now, meaning if I can't go to Amazon.com, who cares if the stock is down? It's good. Maybe Jeff Bezos won't be so rich today. Okay, so do I recommend, for now, using Ubuntu Touch? My answer is yes. I recommend it. Okay, now let me tell you what you can do with these. Currently, Ubuntu Touch is a very limited option because they only support very few devices. Very few. So these are probably the only two devices that are easily available in the US that you can get. The other ones are not really good for the US. So I would not actually recommend some of the other choices if you're not in the US. If you're in the US. So since most of my viewers are in the US, these are two good choices. You can convert this to Ubuntu Touch UB ports. This one is a 1+1 and a Nexus 5. I wouldn't bother with a Nexus 4, it's too old. 1+1 and Nexus 5. This is running Ubuntu Touch, as you can see. And if you watch the video, this is just as fast as the video I showed of the OnePlus. It's pretty nice, yeah. I mean, it moves. The only thing is that the 1+1, the browser was slower. I was running Braxme on it, and Braxme was slower on it. It was faster on a Nexus 5. So why is it faster on Nexus 5? It could be the network. Maybe the Wi-Fi is faster here. Sometimes there's a problem with the Wi-Fi. Or the memory may be faster. In which case, surprisingly, for the browser use, and since you're going to do a lot of web apps, the browser needs to be fast. I don't know, but I found this browser to be faster on the Nexus 5. And this is also a smaller screen. The Nexus 5 is smaller. Okay, so you can see that. Now, if you want a comparison, I have an iPhone 10 here. Okay, so we're going to compare. So the 1+1 is slightly taller than a iPhone, and it's slightly thicker, slightly wider than an iPhone. Okay, and thickness-wise, about the same. You can't tell because this has a bumper. It's about the same there. Let me just compare this. This is a little bit more blocky looking, but it's about the same. Yeah, they're about the same. So now let me just tell you a little surprise for those of you actually paid attention to my video and actually looked at a Ubuntu Touch phone. I was actually surprised by this. Now I pay Apple Music. I pay Apple Music. uh, you get free cloud music on Linux. How did the fuck do they do that? Free cloud music. Anyone. I looked at everything, even new records, and they're all on the Linux phone for free. And I can even download it and put it on the phone and listen to it on the phone. How the fuck do they do that? And not charge money. I don't know what the logic is, but I mean, for somebody like me that likes music, that's pretty cool. I don't need Spotify. I don't need to see ads from Spotify. Spotify is completely unnecessary. You can get every zucking tune. At least the ones I've checked, everything was on here. So free on Linux phone. Now, what else do I have here that's interesting? Some of you will always need navigation. There is a navigation app called UNav, and it's gotten better from the very, very first version of it some years back. It's usable. I mean, it's not Waze. It's not Waze. Don't tell, or they can patch it. Zuck. Well, somebody knows that they have an app for cloud music on an Android, on a Linux. So anyway, UNav. Now you can run Google Maps on this. So Google Maps does exist. You can't run Waze because that's an app. You can't run Waze. You can pretty much run most of the usual, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the usual suspects you can run if you want to get zucked. But of course, you're not going to get Snapchat, and you're not going to get the app version of Instagram. So if you want to do, whatever things you want to put to your zucking face, and put a little, graphic things that change your face, then you can't do that. If you want to morph your face into something else and put fancy emojis and all that, then go to your zucking iPhone. So for those of us who want privacy and just need to have the ability not to be left out, and if you're out on the road and you want to look at the news and whatever, you can do it. The browser works very well on the Ubuntu Touch. It works just fine. So I don't know what else is critical to you people, but you tell me what's critical to you. I'll tell you if it's on here. But I find that, this is a more practical solution than my old solution, which was to use a BlackBerry Bold 9900. And let me tell you why that did not work for me. The reason that it did not work for me to use the BlackBerry Bold 9900 was because the browser wasn't very good. And I can't go to YouTube and check my subscriptions, subscribers, and the comments and respond to comments. I can't do that. That's mostly what I need to do on the road is look at the YouTube stuff and see and respond to people. And I can't do that on a BlackBerry Bold. So as much as I want to be secure, I'm forced to carry the iPhone because I don't have a choice. Now I will have a choice. I don't need that. YouTube runs very well on this. I don't have a problem running YouTube on the Ubuntu Touch at all. It runs pretty nicely as a web app. Runs good. Videos run well, and I don't. In fact, I'm not very fond of the YouTube app anyway, and the web app runs just like what you expect on a computer. So that's so yes, this is recommended. Now let me just it's a Nexus 5 battery. User replaceable? I don't know. Probably not, right? But then again, it's actually I don't know. But I'm going to tell you this. Well, it's the 1+1. I've not opened this yet, but you can buy a replacement battery for 1+1 for $10. $10. This is the Nexus 5. and it's running Ubuntu Touch right now, if you can see in the shadows there. So this is running a GNU Linux. This is running, this is a OnePlus One, and I kind of broke it. I have to reinstall it. This still has Android on it. This is not the unit I used for the video. The video unit I returned. Not much space on those. Space to do what? What do you need the space for, Alex? Okay, this one is 64 gigabytes. This one, I believe, is 32. This is 64. They have 16 versions of this, and I believe there's a 32 gigabyte version of that. So obviously get the bigger ones. But music, videos, apps. It's web apps. You don't store anything in here. You don't actually store music and videos in here because they're web apps. They're in the cloud, so there's no need to store it. The music can be stored, but certainly 32 gigabytes is good enough to store music. But you don't need to store lots of videos. Now, let me just tell you the difference between these two, aside from price. I bought this one for $60. I bought this one for $45, the Nexus 5. Now, the Nexus 5 at $45 is the international version. So I should have paid for $60 to get a US version. So just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's the right one. So it's a very nice phone. It actually looks pristine here. Looks very clean. And no scratches or anything. So yeah, it looks nice. Looks new. So this one was $45 for the Nexus, $60 for this. So they'll run you between 60 to 90, to be frank, depending on the condition. 60 to 90. Now the condition is very good. This one is $60. Condition is very good. Now I had to have them change it though. The original one was a bit beat up, but this one is in very good condition. This replacement, and everything runs. So now from an installation point of view, it's easier to install on a stock OnePlus One, the one factory stock. But the one I got is not factory stock. They already loaded Android on this. This originally came with Cyanogen Mod, which is not Android, and that would have been easy to uninstall and put in Ubuntu. I mean UB ports that I had in the video, but the one I got here already had Android loaded on it, and that's the problem. So this one is stuck right now. Okay, this one originally came with Android. This is the Nexus 5, and the instructions were a little bit different. Other than that, it went pretty smoothly. I mean, it's just a slight difference in instructions, which I noted on the notes. But you know, it's not too bad. It's not locked. So, which one would I choose? I'm going to tell you the camera on this is better. This is a much better camera. This is like 12 megapixels. This one's like 5. So yeah, this is a much better camera. So if you're going to take a lot of pictures, use this. You don't use Snapcrap? Lucky you. Do you use ZuckBook? Do you use ZuckBook? If you use ZuckBook, then you're zucked anyway. 3D map. Okay, what am I missed with the comments here? Geeks like us or get free tones. Do those OSs run like a normal Linux desktop? No, they do not. Throw away. That is what I'm unhappy about, and that's a subject for another matter. Yes, I had to make a slight modification in Brax. Do they run Brax well? Not as well as an iPhone. uh, problem number one, because you're running uh, the web app, Ubuntu does not allow touch. So you can't swipe Braxme. Braxme has no swipe. So you have to go to button pushing. So, yeah, so I don't like that. I like the fact that I can swipe my Braxme, and I can't do a swipe on these. That's about the main difference. I can't swipe. Other than that, you can load a Braxme app on it. You can make your own web app. I never use swipe anyway. Well, I'm kind of a swipe user because it's really nice on iPhone. I'm going to tell you that Brax runs probably 4 times faster on iOS than on any of these phones. So iOS, I mean, an iPhone is really fast. So if you're looking for speed, I mean, there's no doubt that Apple has the speed. How much RAM does the Ubuntu phone have? Whatever you buy. So I forget the specs on these. I actually don't remember how much RAM they have. And the Nexus 5 is performing faster. So either it has more RAM or faster RAM. Otherwise, the CPU is almost the same. You get swiped out of scopes. Yeah, but that's not the same use in Braxme. So is it always like flawless to install? I'm going to tell you right now, no. You do need some sort of, in case something goes wrong, you need to know what you're doing. So if you're somewhat handy, you should be able to figure it out. Because there's some variances from phone to phone. If you buying, I'm going to tell you right now, if you get a OnePlus One and the original OS is on there as it was when it was sold, the instruction on the video is accurate. If you are going to install on a OnePlus One with the OS already changed, the procedures will be completely different. So you have to kind of like come up with a whole set of different procedures. And in fact, I did not get it running, so I don't even know what procedures yet. Okay? On the Nexus 5, the procedures are different, but it looks like quite predictable. And even if you make a mistake, you can always load the original Android on here and go back to the beginning. So you can always, Google has the original code to put this back to the way it was originally, and then you can start again. So I'd say the Nexus 5 probably is much more reliable for consistency. These are only consistent if they sold it. You may want to ask before you buy one. Okay, again, tip to people buying a OnePlus One. Ask if they have the original OS on here, which was Cyanogen Mod. Cyanogen Mod, CM. This is not Android. Cyanogen Mod is an Android custom ROM. The precursor to Lineage OS was Cyanogen Mod. So that's what's on here. If you have that, easy. If you don't have that, it's going to be locked out and you got to play some tricks. And that's the hard part to figure out. Okay? Nexus 5 has no SD card. Correct. Is there an SD card on either one? No. I think a 3rd or 4th gen Librem 5 will be okay. Hopefully they make it that far. Then you can buy a new Pine phone. Why do you need a 3rd, 4th gen Librem 5? Then just get a Pine phone. Pine phone will be available roughly around the same time, which is, I'm going to guess, really around first quarter of 2020. So I think we're still several months away from getting a new Linux phone. So in the meantime, you can play with old Linux phones for $50, $60. And when you're done with these, sell them again. You can still probably sell it for 50, $60. Anything to ask when buying an Nexus 5? Yes, Great Gold. Ask if it is the international model or US. So, yes. So on on a Nexus 5, do not buy the international one unless you are not in the US. For people in the US, do not make my mistake. I bought international, which wasn't the fault of the seller, so I gave him his money anyway. So all sales are about surface things. It is okay. So Kelp said something. Okay, so by the way, if you're not interested in phone privacy, you're in the wrong Zucking channel. What is the best app to use for calling and texting that allows you to change your number whenever? I don't know if that would matter, Elias. Because you're using the baseband. Are you talking voice over IP? You'd have to use voice over IP with a VPN. I'm not even sure, because once you connect to the network, you can't do it straight from the phone. The fact that the baseband is there, you cannot use the baseband. I told you, there's no way around it. The baseband will spot you. I don't care what device, even if it's a Librem 5, they will spot you the moment you turn on the Zucking baseband. Like my videos on burner phones, you cannot hide with a burner phone. I mean, to get rid of scammer calls. My I don't know what the best one is. I get scammer calls, but I'm getting them less because T-Mobile's blocking them. So T-Mobile blocks many of the scammer calls, so I get a lot less. But unfortunately, I don't know if there is even a solution to scammer calls. Ali's back. So I don't know if there's a solution to that. I'm actually it's not something that I've been satisfied with, and I'm not sure I know what the answer is. So it's not one I researched completely, because it's not a direct problem with privacy, but it's one that is very frustrating to me as well. How about, what is the best way to check if your USB is malicious in hardware? How are you doing, Ali? How about, what is the best way to check if your USB is malicious in hardware? Are you talking about what USB are we talking about? You mean on a phone or on a computer? I can write code on a Linux phone to spot that. You took a long break, and I didn't even I didn't even notice the break, so that must not have been too long. I'm glad, Ali. So anyway, back to Elias. Elias, on Linux, I can write code that can check to see if there's any other USB service that is being used that shouldn't be. So that's actually not hard. You can kind of look in the. If you're on Linux, go to the etc dev or boot dev or whatever it is, and look at all the devices on there and see if a device registered itself that you're not aware of and added itself to the device list. So that's actually not too hard to do in Linux. It's very predictable. Hardware is very difficult to know if it is malicious or not. Yeah, but you know what your base hardware is. So if your hardware changed, then you would know. Do you have to install Run Ubuntu on Nexus? Will it run without it? It's Android. Great Gold, this is an Android phone. So you get it as an Android phone. Why do you want to run it as an Android phone? I have no idea, but it is an Android phone. Okay? So, okay, let me just see what other comments I missed here. So hardware is very difficult to know. If let me just tell you something that one of the reasons I get so excited about Linux is, I made this. Let me tell you a scenario here. If somebody's spying on your phone, and I'm talking about remote access Trojans or three-letter agency spying on your phone and putting little pieces of whatever listening stuff on the phone, it will emit a signal. And that signal may not come when you're watching the phone. Typically, signals that show it's communicating with some other server happens when the device is not used. So I wrote an app for this, and this is the app that I was playing with on Linux, to actually act like a little mini Kali Linux, and I can put it on a Linux phone. So I can put it on the Linux phone like this and run my app. That's the app that in theory can sense if anything is communicating maliciously. The reason I made that is if let's say I run it in the background and just leave the phone and see if something suspicious happens to this, then I'll know that it's compromised, in which case then I can reinstall everything from scratch. That's what I was trying to accomplish. I can do that on Linux fairly easily. It's not very easy to do on Android or iOS because they lock you down. But I was able to do it in a few days on Linux, and I got it running. And I actually made a fairly aggressive Linux app on Linux desktop, which will run on a phone. Not this one, but it will run on Pure OS, on the Librem 5. And what it did was I can actually watch the traffic on the network, and then if I spot a unknown MAC address, because I was actually able to log all devices on the network, and then if I find one that I did not recognize, I can jam it. So I just select, no, I don't know who that is, jam. I hit that and jam, and then maybe whoever the attacker is will leave, or I try to identify where it is. So anyway, that's something I can easily do on Linux, and that's one of the fun things about Linux, because if Linux works just like a desktop, there's so much you can do versus the lockdown Android and iOS environments. Glad it cut. Oh, good. You're learning something here, I hope. Throw away. Okay, so Josma, what did I miss here? For UB Touch, try the 1+1 next time it's been rated the best as far as or wait for the 1+3 which is out this week. Again, my comments on that, Josmo, yes, the 1+1 is they said is the fastest device that they recommend on UB ports. However, the browser was faster on this. It was noticeably faster for web apps. So native apps, maybe it's faster. I don't know. The processors of these two are almost identical. So I have to check the memory and everything else. I don't even know how much RAM each one has. But I'm going to tell you that this has a bigger screen, better camera, but to me this is older. The Nexus is older, but the browser was faster. The browser, specifically the browser, that was faster. The browser was slow on this. Don't know why. So anything network seemed to be slow on this. So maybe the Wi-Fi was slower. I'm not sure. I didn't have enough time to test. Snowden. Okay. Okay. What else? What else did I miss here? Uh, Skybear, my app is not just Wireshark for Android. It's more like Kali on Linux, because it has Wireshark is a is only used for detection, whereas mine actually can actually do some action. So it can actually terminate a MAC address from the network and things like that. So it has built-in. What I was doing was more like Nmap, a little bit of Wireshark, a little bit of Kali. So a little mix of those. So yeah. So not necessarily just Wireshark. If you want to do what I was trying to do. So the problem with phones is tracking. Tracking is how cell phones fundamentally work. So you can never really turn tracking off. True or false? The tracking is very specific. So the phone tracking are very specific things. I'm telling you how the tracking occurs. The problem is we accept the tracking as normal. I don't know what happened in society where the tracking used to be such a big bother to people, and they say Big Brother and so on, and then in the last 9 years or 7 years, suddenly we say, we can't. No, more than that now. Since 2007, so the last dozen years, we're saying no. We don't care about tracking anymore. You can track us all day. We will display our lives and show every detail of what we do every single moment, and none of us really care, and we do not need to hide it. I don't know what changed. What changed? Hello, Cashman. What caused people to say we do not really care about the same values we used to believe in, and we don't really care that a dictator can come in and say, well, I'm going to go identify a certain subgroup and then go eliminate them. For example, somebody put this example on Reddit, and I was just showing you what you can do. Somebody said, I want to identify all Asians. And then now that I've identified them, then I'll send them a virus or something that's specifically been targeted to Asians, and use it to eliminate Asians from the world. I mean, the technology enables that. That's the problem. That technology enables that. There we have 23andMe that can clearly identify your ethnic roots, and then you have social media that can identify every single one of us precisely. So it's and I'm actually I'm distressed that people don't actually think through the implications of what I'm talking about. That if our privacy is lost to this extent, and you cannot take it back, what power can use this for their advantage against us, as it's been used in the past? Now, back in the old days, during Hitler's time, they check your ID and looked at your name and such, and that's how they determined if you were Jewish, and then you got sent to the camps. It'll be more efficient now. It'll be very efficient. They can even, easily identify who has a gun. Nukes can. We need our dang landlines back already. Use voice over IP. What if they decided to segregate the Chads from the Kyles? Chlorine in the water is just as bad as fluoride. Fluoride makes me gag. If it's not darn game show, they've been tuning my big brother into a good word. They're still the boogeyman. So maybe that's what it is. TV shows turn Big Brother into a good thing. So, so now Big Brother's entertainment instead of what it really is, which is 1984. So we have definitely a rift here, and people don't realize that some of the stuff they're giving up they can never get back. So I'm teaching those I can teach. I cannot teach a lot of people because no one wants to listen. But for those who want to listen, yes, you have to fight for privacy. Privacy is not going to be given to you. Privacy cannot be expected anymore. And if you don't fight for it, it will be lost immediately, and then you will be identified as one of the sheep. So if you use your VPN, I still need a DNS HTTPS. No, Elias, no. Watch my ducking video. Do not ever use DNS over HTTPS. No. I explained that in my video. Elias, do not use HTTPS over DNS over HTTPS. When you use my VPN de-anonymizes you because the DNS request doesn't come from you. It comes from my server. So they don't know who my server is. They just get a lot of requests from my server, combined with all the other people who do requests on HTTPS. So there's no we no longer have the issue of knowing what your IP address is and that you made a specific DNS request. Now, DNS over HTTPS identifies you precisely, and you're sending it only to Google, and it's encrypted, so nobody knows you're sending it to Google, and Google is the only one that knows it. How is that a good thing? If Google said, I'll take your IP address, I'll take your DNS request anonymously and report it to you anonymously, that would be one thing. But DNS over HTTPS is not anonymous. Not. So it makes it worse. Makes it worse. So do not use DNS over HTTPS. What's the best way to get rid of tracking on iOS? Do not use iOS. There is no solution for you. What is the best way to get rid of tracking on Android? Do not use Android. I'm going to be very clear here. Android and iOS is not a choice. Android and iOS have to be dumped if you want some privacy. If you want to use Android and iOS, get a zucking iPad and tablet and use it at home. And then pick a different device for outside the home, not running iOS and Android, and preferably Linux, GNU Linux, not zucking Android Linux, GNU Linux, preferably GNU Linux. It will be multiple times better in security than running anything else, like even a Lineage OS. Next question is, do you need to pay $720 for a Librem 5 to get some sort of security? If you want to use GNU Linux, no, you do not. There's a workaround. This is close enough. So in the meantime, since I'm not going to get my Librem 5 for months, can I use this for now? And the answer is yes. Will this give me privacy? Absolutely. To a large extent, it will. Not perfectly, but nothing is perfect. It will do a fairly good job. That's in my video, Kelp. I don't need to repeat. So watch my video and then you put a comment on there. Uh, Start supporting the UBports team. They're a small group, unsung heroes in my book. Federal Reserve create the currency. I'm sure of all the fail safes when it comes to this, yet I know all the dumb phones were great as you took out the battery and the phone was definitely off. Does a virtual box Linux protect me from Microsoft? Okay, hold on, Elias. Which one is the host? Elias, which is the host? Is the host Windows or is the host Linux? I very unclear on what you're talking about. Which is which? Windows host. Uh, okay, so Windows host, and then you're using Linux on the inside. Uh, Answer no. Um, because you're using an Intel computer which has IME, right? IME can copy your entire VirtualBox session and load it elsewhere. So IME is the attack point. So you're going to have to get a computer without IME on it. Are there Intel computers without IME? Yes, the new ones. The new consumer ones don't. This is a HP Spectre X360. I have 3 of these, and they no longer have IME. So I have 3 XP Spectres. They do not have IME on it. So therefore, they're safe. I run Windows on them, and then I run it through a VPN router. This is kind of an important thing for many of you to think about. This is a very, very important device. I have a VPN, and I've always had a VPN. Where did I get this info? I've been in the tech field for too long. Throwaway. I've been at this too long, so sometimes it's unavoidable that I know too much. And throwaway. Clearly, there aren't too many people that know what I know. So there are many people who do YouTube videos that claim they know. They don't really know. That's why they can't dig into the topic too deeply on the videos, because they're at a loss on how to explain it. They don't know how Wi-Fi triangulation works. They don't know all the code with that. They don't know where it came from, who invented it, and all that. And I've been researching this for so many years and because of my experience in cybersecurity, I've been studying this for a very, very long time, and I understand how it works at a much deeper level. Plus, I actually use the APIs myself. I use geolocation and do that MAC address and all that tracking that Google offered, and I use it myself. So yes, so I have the skills to use it myself. So that's why hardly anything I would ever talk to you about would be theory. I actually have the expertise for this. So when I talk about something, it's usually based on knowledge. So if I don't know it, I'm not going to talk about it. I thought all Intel CPUs have IME now. No. They started the IME can be found mostly on all CPUs from 2007, with the exception of some i3s. i3s don't have them. They did not have Intel CPUs on i3s and Celerons. So no IME on Celerons and i3s. Now, if you have an i5 and i7, the chances of getting IME on it until the year 2017 was extremely high. The chances of having IME were probably along the 90% category, which means MacBook Pros have IME, MacBook Airs have IME, and on and on and on. Okay, so my Macs all have IME on it. And since I didn't know what to do, then since 2017, they were selling computers without IME on it, but you had to search for them because they were not easily found. So I found the ones without IME and I started buying those. So I have 3 different computers now without IME on it. And no, four without IME. 3 of them are HP Spectres, HP 360 Spectres, and one of them is a Lenovo Yoga 720. Lenovo Yoga 720. That does not have IME either. And I don't believe the current models have IME either. So yes, so I just giving you information on that. How about GPUs? GPUs have firmware, so who knows what's in a GPU? I couldn't tell you. What kind of attack is possible from a GPU? GPU is kind of scary because they have access to, in theory, access to the memory bus. So, since it has to transfer memory from the main memory into the GPU, you would think that there would be a connection between the two. Now, is there any possible way for the GPU to spy on you? I have no idea. That's a problem. It can be done, yeah. It can be done. So can somebody write malware that says I'm going to store your keystrokes and such in the GPU? Could you do that? I'm going to guess yes. It's critical thinking now. We can see you, but he sometimes misses a comment at the first try, and you have to repeat when it looks. Yes, I can't. I'm looking at 2 different comments here from Periscope and from YouTube. So Generation Y is the one that asked the question. Who was asking the question? Spirit? Double J? Okay, where's Double J? Oh, Double J was... what are your thoughts about... Sorry, Double J. Boy, your comment was so small. It was on the top there. Okay, what are your comments about a satellite phone? Yeah, that's just phone, though. So... I haven't dealt with a new satellite phone. Do they make it more trackable now? Because in theory, a satellite phone just has to point to the satellite by GPS and all that. So as long as it doesn't have Wi-Fi, because the issue is Wi-Fi. The tracking has been put in Wi-Fi. So do they have tracking on satellite phones? I'm going to guess not any more than any normal radio. So, and ham radio is definitely a good solution because they're not gonna, track you with a ham radio. I mean, no one's gonna waste in doing what is called mass surveillance on ham radio. So the question is really mass surveillance and mass collection of data done by like the Apple, Googles of the world. So if you want to use satellite phone to make calls, do they have small ones or are they all big? Do they have any small ones? So if you want to now, if you're asking me if 3-letter agencies do not listen to satellite phone calls, the answer is no. There's only so many channels on satellite phones. I don't know if you know this, but satellite phones, each satellite has a very limited bandwidth. And guess what? All the traffic in satellite phones go back to the satellite owner. Okay, so let's say I'm, owner of Sat1. Okay, Sat1 is a satellite. So your satellite phone connects to Sat1. All of your traffic goes down to the server of Sat1, and then if you're talking somewhere else, it's gonna exit out of Sat1 office into the normal world. So if I want to listen in on conversations, all I do is listen in at SAT1, the office. So if I'm a three-letter agency, I'm just going to go, watch all the traffic coming out of the SAT1 office, and I've spied on every phone. So if you're talking about listening to conversations, that's even easier on a satellite phone. If you're talking about tracking location, that's what I'm talking about. It's not as easy to do. So again, depending on what you think the threat is. Okay, hold on. I wish I had glasses here. It's really hard to see. That's why I'm missing questions, is mainly because I need glasses. Text is too tiny. It's not mass collection of data. It's massive collection of people to package up and sell. Is there a way to circumvent modern car infotainment system? I don't want to drive 10-year-old junk. You know, I haven't tried to touch my cars, and do you actually know that cars are running some version of Linux? So most cars are just running Linux, and if you can connect to it, there probably is some USB slot inside. If you get inside the circuitry, that's what the hackers did. Then you can connect to the Linux system of your car. Then you can start maybe disabling some of the features. So, yeah, see, that's an area I haven't even attacked. Because it's out of my experience base. So I know they've attacked the cars, but I know someone could send this. This is what's really worrisome. Someone could hack your car and cause your car to get into an accident. So someone could connect to your car and say, I'm going to turn the wheel all of a sudden while you're on a bridge so that you drive your car off the bridge. So this is really, really scary. No wrong. It's 30 years, 1989. Would you really hate my car? I am in a 20-year-old junker. 30 years. Okay. I actually I have a 1990 Mercedes that was just towed. It was towed by the city. And they basically just took it, and now I guess they're going to sell it now. And I don't have any input because apparently there's a 72-hour law in the city of Los Angeles. So if you leave your car for 72 hours and you don't move it, they can tow it. And so they towed my 1990 car that was running fine, and and now it's gone. So I had an old car too. So 1990, yeah, that's what, 29 years? 29-year-old car, yeah. Escape from LA. That's a fact, sir. Oh no, what the crap? Do not let them take your... Oh no, what the crap? Do not let them take your property like that. Actually, I didn't know about that rule. And I went to the internet, and apparently it's a new ordinance in the city of Los Angeles, and like a couple-year old ordinance, and it wasn't publicized that anyone can point to any car that hasn't been moved in 72 hours and have it towed away, even though it's your neighbor's car. Why are you letting it go to auction? Because it isn't worth anything, Kelp. The car is not worth anything. Car was confiscated by the city of San Francisco. James Marvin, yes. So yes, my car was confiscated as well, and I said, Doc, keep it. I was actually about to get it towed because I was gonna donate it. So now, instead of being able to donate it for something good, the city of Los Angeles took it. Zuck. So yeah, I was just the only reason I was sitting there was just I was waiting for some Cash for Clunkers program, and they denied the Cash for Clunkers, and then before I had a chance to call the basically I just missed a weekend. I said, "Oh, let me call. I'm gonna call cash. I'm gonna call the junkyard next week," and they came and picked it up the week before. You should be able to get a refund on your registration then. That's zucking awesome. They can they got car for you. How zucking nice of them. Yes, zuck them. This is the zucked up world that I'm in. So yeah, you basically, if you don't like your neighbors, just watch for the car. Say, ooh, they're not moving that car. I'm gonna get that towed. I'm gonna watch Kelp, and if he goes on vacation, I'm gonna go to Kelp's neighborhood and say, Kelp, when are you going on vacation? If he goes on vacation and his car doesn't get moved for 72 hours because he went on a 72-hour vacation, I'm gonna call the city and have him tow Kelp's car away. Excellent system. So, well, you can't fight it. When I looked at the rules and said, okay, well, it's not worth fighting then. They would charge me for towing and all this and storage. And it's like, I was going to get rid of the car anyway. But it cost me basically what I would have donated for. Sophisticated Kelp, you seem to support it. You were talking about it like, oh, it is such a problem here in Virginia. So let's implement the rules in Los Angeles. Yeah, great stuff. So ham radio licensing, government definitely have you on ham radio licensing. Government definitely has you on their spy list. That's interesting, Josmo, since I am a ham radio operator. Yes, you have to identify yourself in ham radio, and you have to identify every time you talk. And because you identify it, you actually are of no interest to anyone. So, and there's no mass data collection because radio transmissions are not really good for that kind of mass collection. Hello, Go Rice Girl. So I don't believe that ham radio, because of its nature, where it's in very small areas, it's not worth doing the mass collection on that you can do on the internet with such ease. So since there's no way to get feedback, you transmit, I get you, but I can't do anything else about it. Good to see you, Go Rice Girl. How are you doing, Joanne? So anyway, Joanne, did you see my YouTube channel? I mean, the YouTube channel is like popping here. So thank you, my friends. The YouTube channel is like, growing at an incredible pace here. I'm almost at 4,200 now. And I'll be at 5K in a few days. Could be a week. Next week, I could be at 5K by my next week. This is incredible. I mean, it's moving so fast. It's moving so fast. I'm roughly, my pace right now is 3,000 a month. So if I'm lucky, then yeah, 3,000 a month. My goodness, I could be at 10K. If I keep this up, I'll be at 10K by the end of the year. In 1 year. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. It's incredible. So why did it change? you keep making videos, and then some of your videos hit. So people like me talking about phones. So that's my new thing now. Go Rice Girl. So phones, because I talk about Zuck, nobody watches me. I talk about phones, everyone watches me. So we're talking about phones. So, which I know a lot about. Thank you, Lisa Flores Bird. Thank you so much. So yes, I actually, it's kind of a side comment here. I accidentally clicked on some of my older videos, the videos I did at the beginning of the year. Some of you know that I've only done this since the beginning of the year. So I haven't been doing videos before. I've been live streaming on Periscope for 4 years, but I have not done videos. And it's such a different thing. And I watched my videos at the beginning of the year, like the ones I did in January and so, and they were sucking awful. They were like, they were bad. And I should redo them all because, I said, who would watch this? So they're really bad. So hopefully I'm learning now and how to make a video. Seriously, Bitcoin, it was at 7,400 this morning. There are many of us who are sharing their content. Yeah, the lighting is great and it's a great look. Oh, you mean the what I do with the videos? Yeah, I just stuck to a formula and just used the same one. And people who've actually giving me advice on how to make videos didn't want me to do that. They wanted me to. So Lisa Flores, somebody wanted me to do more of a like a like a TV channel setup, with kind of TV background, more graphical and so on, and where it's more formal. And I said I don't want to do that. It's just not me because I'm doing my broadcast from my house, and it doesn't look natural. So so I want it to be more house-like. So like this. I'm just so it's the videos are a little bit more house-like. I'm not. I'm trying to make it seem like I'm always just in my office kind of thing. So I have a diversified, good Salt Lakers. Monero much better. Okay, so Bitcoin is moving, huh? Finally, Zuckbook is white belt level. So people made money just, I gotta run. Okay, my friend. So anyway, we'll talk more about this, but I want to tell you about some of the issues with using this. I'm researching how you use a Linux phone and what you can do with a Linux phone tomorrow. I want to get into more because it's not as simple as it looks. It's I want to comment about how they made this specific GNU Linux, which is Ubuntu Touch. This may work for many of you. And this is good enough for privacy reasons, but it's not one that is interesting enough for me. I want more of a pure OS, and I'll explain that later on because there is some parts of the experience that are a little bit unsatisfactory for me as a power user. So I'll explain that. I'll explain that later on. But I'm not. For me, as a more experienced Linux user, I want to be able to do Linux things. This stops me, and let's talk about that tomorrow. Okay? So, good night, my friends, and sorry for the, again, disruption in the signal at this exact hour. It's so zucked up. It's always at the beginning of the broadcast. So, sorry about that, and see you tomorrow. Good night.